My next guest has made national headlines for his interviews with senators, politicians, Oprah, Ellen, Brad Pitt, and he did it all before the age of 16. His YouTube channel is Jaden Jefferson Reports. He has thousands of followers, and someday he will likely replace me in this very job. Jaden Jefferson's up late with me tonight here on the Final Five. How are you, man? Good to see you.
I'm doing great. How are you?
So you came onto our radar, my radar, years ago when you were just 11, but that was only 5 years ago. How did you get interested in becoming a journalist and doing a lot of these pretty important interviews?
Yeah, I mean, the news has kind of always been a part of my life. I think it's kind of one of those background things where it's like, yeah, I did kind of grow up watching the news. And I do think that that kind of played a role in me going into journalism, because after a certain point, I got a camera. And that was really the beginning of the whole Jaden Reports journey, where I would actually go through my hometown, attending different events and covering them. And that really started something that I really didn't expect.
There is a lot has been said about how this advent of having a phone in your pocket and shooting video anywhere, and the internet really has democratized journalism. It's given people like you and giving so many different people a voice that wouldn't have a voice before. So with that voice, what are you trying to accomplish? What do you want people to know about who you are and what kind of journalist you are?
For sure. I definitely think that in the social media era, it has become very confusing for news consumers, because one thing that has been a downside to this has been the misinformation, the disinformation, and that is definitely something that you have to navigate. And so I kind of use that as an opportunity to say, hey, I'm just a journalist, you know, there's no agenda here. But it's hard for viewers to understand that, because they're basically being, introduced to this new age where everyone online has an agenda. Whereas for me, it's just about traditional journalism, similar to the journalism that we do here in local news.
Yeah, and in terms of people you've talked with, you mentioned a couple of the names. There was an interview you did with Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Yes.
I mean, these big names, big consequential names in our nation right now, when you reach out to them and say, hey, I'm Jaden, I'm from Toledo, Ohio, I want to talk to you, is it usually a reaction, or do you have to really beat the door down?
Oh, you've got to push for it. Yeah, you have to be a menace. But, a lot of the time, though, you eventually will get that interview. But sometimes it's more difficult. People will say, you should interview this person, this person. There's a whole process to it a lot of the time. And so that may not be the interview that happens. But maybe down the road you have a connection that's able to make that happen. But most of the time it's just persistence.
Through this whole journey over the last couple of years, how has this changed your life? Because clearly it has. You wouldn't be here if not for this really life-changing experience that you've been through.
Definitely, it's prepared me to go into the industry full time. I mean, I definitely want to continue with journalism. But at the same time, it's also given me a new perspective on this age that we're living in, because most teenagers are experiencing the social media election age through Instagram Reels, whereas I'm getting to experience it actually being there. Like, I'm talking to the elected officials and the ones that are seeking re-election, and that gives you a whole new perspective.
When you talk to your peers about this sort of thing, I mean, look, I know from experience, I was a news nerd myself, growing up, and the funny thing was I got to meet an anchor in my hometown in 1987, well before you were born, at an Arby's in my hometown, and 25 years later, when I went to work in Pittsburgh, he was the manager who opened the door for me. Oh, wow. And I said, he didn't remember that experience, but the people around you in your life, what's their reaction? I mean, do you find that there's apathy towards what's going on in the world, or are we selling this generation short?
There's a little bit of both. I mean, there are definitely times that at 16 years old, I'm like, I'm so sick of this generation. But then there are times I'm like, they could fix it. Because I could see that there are some double negatives, I could see it from both angles. But I do think, though, from a lot of the people I've met, because I'm also involved in Model UN, it's a part of my educational journey.
That's awesome.
And I get to meet a lot of kids that are just passionate about the world. And I'm like, we might be okay. We might have a future,
So what the journey beyond this? You do this, your YouTube channel. You do something called Toledo
News this morning.
So what is that?
That is definitely something new that I've tried doing, and I started it back in 2020. And it was actually supposed to be just a quick recap of the news of the week. And so it's really become an important part of what I do, because during the week I'm covering a lot of national and international stories. Sure. But at the same time, I still kind of get my foot into the local journalism space. And so anchoring that short morning newscast on Saturdays, it gives the viewer something quick and all of the headlines, but for me, helps stay local.
How much has your parents encouraged you on this journey?
Oh, yeah. I mean, most people aren't driving every day to a store. Like, I always tell them, at least I'm not playing sports, but they're like, you cancel that out with the fact that you're taking me to all these places all the time.
Yeah.
So it really is definitely something that I've enjoyed.
Jaden, I didn't play sports. I think things turned out pretty well for me because I get to meet people like you. Thanks for coming in, man.
Thank you.
Great meeting you. Good luck with everything.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And we will certainly talk with you again very soon. Thanks.
Thank you.